The door finally opened, and Dan walked through, shaking his head and rolling his eyes. "Man, I'm so sorry you had to wait." "It's okay," Kevin said, smiling as if he hadn't spent the better part of an hour twiddling and tweeting his thumbs. They shook hands, and Dan nodded for him to follow. They'd met like this many times, but something felt different. Everything from the plane ride here to waiting in the lobby for so long to Dan's quickly ushering him inside. "I'm just being paranoid." "We had to have a meeting right before everybody took off for Thanksgiving," Dan said as he walked to his office. "What a joke." "Everything okay?" Dan gave a half laugh as they took their seats, Dan behind the desk and Kevin in front. Kevin had noted how busy people outside Dan's office seemed, busier than he'd ever seen them. Inside the office, Dan's big body tilted back in a chair that appeared beaten into submission. "So, how are you doing?" Dan asked it like a counselor, in a tone that wanted to know if he was about ready to jump out a 51st-story window. "Doing well." "Trip up here good?" Kevin nodded as he shifted in his seat. He already knew the answer he'd been dreading. He wasn't being Debbie Downer, but he knew. Dan's serious glance, his tone, the awkward small talk. "Jenny feeling okay?" "Yeah, sure. She keeps getting more uncomfortable, but that's part of the process." "When are the babies due again?" "Technically February, but now we're thinking it'll be more like January. Hoping, at least." "Hoping for a lot of things, Dan." "Wow, and what are you having?" "2 more boys." Dan nodded and raised his eyebrows in a manner that said, "You're in deep, buddy." He didn't need to tell him. Kevin knew too well. "You ready for the twins?" "I don't know if anybody's ever ready for 1, much less 2. "See, that's why I never got married," Dan said as he glanced down at his desk and pulled over a document. "Then I'd be sitting there like you, 1 with 2 more on the way. I could barely manage owning a dog." Speaking of dogs, the hot dog Kevin had grabbed at the airport for lunch no longer seemed like a sensible time-saving decision. Now it was barking somewhere deep down inside of his gut. "I don't know how to tell you this." Boom. "That's the opening line of every bad piece of news there is," Kevin said. "Man, this isn't personal, you know?" "Sure is to me, buddy." Kevin nodded and kept his mouth shut. He wiped the sweat off his forehead. "We're not going to be able to renew the retainer," Dan said, looking at the document that was surely the one Kevin was hoping to sign and bring back home to Jenny and the boys. "I know we've been talking, and I've been telling you it looked promising, and it did for a while." Kevin moved to the edge of his seat, not looking away from Dan and not blinking. "Can you tell me why?" "You're expensive," Dan said, his blunt New York style adding to the blow. "As I told you before, the retainer price can be renegotiated if you want." "No, Kevin, I'm sorry. It's not that. Entire budgets have been slashed, including marketing and PR. They've given me nothing to work with. There's no way we can keep a firm on retainer. I'm working project by project, and even those are going to be dramatically different." Kevin's mind raced. As he swallowed, his mouth and throat felt dry. Even though he usually thought the worst, actually experiencing it was a blow. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked. "Anything to change your mind?" Dan rubbed his cheek. He looked a lot like Kevin probably looked. Overworked, underpaid, stressed out. "It's not my mind that needs to change. I tried, Kevin. You gotta believe me. I really did. I know with your family and all—" "No, it's okay," Kevin said. "My family and the twins are my business, and that's none of your concern." Dan gritted his teeth, glancing down at his desk for an awkward moment. Kevin didn't realize that his last statement had come out so loud, so aggressive-sounding. "Maybe there will be a chance to have Precision work with you guys in the coming year on some of those projects," Kevin said, trying to control his voice and his expression and his pride. "Yeah, maybe." It was like a girl telling him they could still be friends just after dumping him. "I hate doing this right before the holidays," Dan said. "Oh yeah, make that like being dumped before prom." Dan studied him, could no doubt see the surprise on his face. "I didn't want to do this over the phone," he said, his look earnest. I was really hoping to change minds, or I never would have had you fly all the way out here. I understand, really. It's tough for everybody these days." Kevin nodded, forced a smile, and then shifted, ready to bolt. The last thing he wanted was to be talked down to in pity. "I appreciate your business," Kevin said. "It's meant a lot." He stood and shook hands with Dan. There was one thing he'd learned years ago. Don't burn a bridge, especially when that bridge accounted for most of his revenue. The walk back to the not-so-friendly receptionist felt excruciating. Yet in a strange way, Kevin felt he'd rather be there under her Nazi rule than enduring Dan's sympathetic, sad stare. A large hand clapped his shoulder in a way that was surely intended as brotherly. Instead, it made Kevin feel like a little boy. "Man, I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry." Kevin nodded. "Me too. You got my number. You know where to call if you need anything. Anything." So this is it. This is how it goes. Dan walked back to his desk and his job and his life, while Kevin stood in the lobby for a moment. He glanced at the receptionist and smiled at her. She gave a polite but quick smile, then looked back down at whatever was there in front of her to look at. As he passed the Christmas tree to go to the elevator, Kevin thought about taking one of the elegantly wrapped presents home with him as a reminder. Then he could open it up on Christmas morning to find the answer he'd been waiting for several weeks. "Look, honey, this is what I spent 10 years working toward." The box would be empty, of course, like this trip, like his career. As he entered the elevator, Muzak played a rendition of a country song he knew well, and it caused Kevin to start laughing, then to shake his head and look at the reflection of himself in the door in front of him. God must be a country music fan, he thought, 'cause this is how he gets back at me for ignoring him for so long. The song that played was "He Stopped Loving Her Today" by George Jones. And yes, that's what had happened today.